I got an email about how to use CSS, and I don't even think I've actually done a little guide or tips on that just to get you started on CSS. I've done them in HTML, JavaScript, PHP, but I don't think I've ever done them in CSS. So hopefully you can follow along with this. The cascading style sheets is a one of hierarchy, okay? So what I've done, I've got a folder with 2 images, okay? This Cox and PAW, and I've got a CSS HTML file, and I've got a CSS file as well, okay? So the .css for that, and obviously HTML. So you're going to start with this, okay? And this is just in your normal editor. Whichever one you use, you'll find this when you for a new file of HTML. Okay, so to get an external CSS file, just put in a shortcut, which is this link here. Okay, right. So what that is you're linking rel equals style sheet. So you're linking the style sheet, and now you have to href equals. Href you might know from things like hyperlinks and that. So what you're going to do is you're going to link your CSS. Okay, so it's css.css. That's just the file name that I've given. Okay, so just save that. All right. Okay. So this is this comes up on here on mine. I'm using something called Tweak Style. I think it's my favorite code editor, but I mean, there's 2 popular ones, which is brackets and Sublime Text, but it's a similar principle. Anyway, so what you have here is, I'll just take this out, save that. Okay, so what we're going to do here, right, I'm going to put in 2 images. So one is image source. This is just your normal HTML, okay, and one's called Cox, which is a something I do for a client. Okay, so we just knock that down. Okay, so that's one image. The other one is something called PAWU dot, oh dear, JPEG, not HTML, DME. What am I thinking of? JPEG. Okay, right. Spot the deliberate mistake there. Eh? Okay, so when you have say in this example, I mean, you can use div tags and all sorts. So this is what happens when that comes up. So this is by default their size. Okay, so I'd imagine that's about 500-600 pixels. All right. So what you can do there now is you can change them, and we'll do the hierarchy, which is the external ones, and the external have the lowest hierarchy. Okay, so what they're used for, which is this here, what these are used for and what they're great for is when you've got a pretty large site, plenty of pages, and you just want to put, like, so the cover, like all you don't want to be, rewriting everything in every single page. So an external CSS sheet takes care of that. Okay, so what happens now is that you do image right. Okay, and why we don't need a selector, which is either a class or an ID, is because an image is already an HTML element. Any HTML element doesn't need a class selector or an ID selector. Okay, so what I'm going to do there is I'm just going to knock that size down. So we're going to put in so image and width. Okay, width, and we're just going to put in 300 pixels. Okay. So now there you can see that on here, on the live view, that's changed. Okay, so we just save that changes. All right, okay, so we come to another hierarchy. The hierarchy now is inline. Okay, internal, sorry. There's external, internal, and inline. Okay, so now we're going to just put in style. Okay, and we have that in the head. All right. So now I want to change one of these images, and I want to change this black one. Okay. So we're just going to put in a selector. So you can put in class equals PA, because that's just the shorter form of the image. And up here I'm going to put in class, which you have to have a dot first. Okay, so dot PA, and then you could change that so that width would be 200 pixels. Okay, so that's now going to be smaller than the other one. So if we just put that in there, refresh that. Okay, so now that the white image, or the white thing, hasn't changed, but the black one has. I'll tell you what I'll do though here is put in me external style sheet, because that white's not really showing up very well. I'll just quickly put this in, put in body BGC, and I'm just going to put in anyway, I'll just put in blue. Alright, so you can see it better now. Okay, so that's not really part of this tips, but so that you can see what I'm doing. Alright, so basically what we've learned is that the external one is the lowest in the hierarchy, but it's good for many pages. The style internal is higher in the hierarchy, but it's usually used for maybe it's like a one-page site, which I do quite a few of, or maybe it's a couple of pages. But when it's not as good, is the lowest in the hierarchy, where you're doing a big site where you need to cover many pages, and the external one is the one you would use for that. Okay, right. The other one there, you could use the class and ID, would do exactly the same thing there. So if you just pop the ID and then we just put the hashtag, okay, you'd still see the same thing. So nothing changes there. All right. So many people, I suppose it's a preference, class and ID. It's whatever. That's pretty much an important, I would say. But anyway, so getting on to this one here, the white one. Now the inline, right, is the king of hierarchy. That has more power than either internal or external. So you would put just a style equals speech marks there, and you would say, width 150 pixels. Okay. Right, just refresh that, and that should, there you are. So now it's gone really small. What that's used for with the style inline, okay, is that it's very good if you just want to change one particular element. You could have 10 images, for example. You want 9 the same, and you want one that's different, and that's where that comes into play. And it is. A lot of designers would say that they use external style sheets the most, and bits of internal, but the inline is still the king of a particular element itself, and I think it's very important still. So basically what it is right, this, to cover it over, okay, you don't need, if you need HTML elements, get that right, don't need a class selector or an ID selector, because they're already elements in themselves. When you do need is when you have to change a particular element in that. So you're in there, for example, the image, now you want something different, so you do an internal one with a class selector, which is the ID or the class. And And that's basically how you do it. It's just trying to. I mean, there's lots of things with CSS. It's a massive topic now, but the basics can be learned quite quickly, and it's just trying to where the hierarchy is, and things like as I say, the elements of HTML is very important. So things like form. Forms don't need it and tables don't need it, but if you wanted something to change in that particular thing, then you do. So you do need a class selector or an ID selector, and that's how it works. So I'm sure a lot of this hasn't really, some of this, you still have questions on, people still have questions on this, but of course, just get back to us as always. So again, thanks for watching and thanks for listening.